We are going to move on to our second debate. And this one is actually inspired by one of your posts on LinkedIn, Luke. And so this debate will evolve around people experience design. Now, perhaps to refresh some people's memories on this, Luke, can you briefly perhaps explain what we mean or what you mean by people experience design?
Yeah, definitely. I'll give you my definition, and people can challenge it if they want. But essentially, it's the idea that the people experience is the product that we're providing as a people function, and so we need to take a more design-focused approach to how we're doing that. So, particularly a human-centered design approach, where we empathize truly with the end user, and we use design thinking, we use validated learning, and we use agile to actually deliver based on real-time business and user needs through adopting design practices rather than more traditional lift and shift, copy and paste policies and processes. They worked over here, so they'll work fine just here. Let's just ship them in. It's more, that's the idea. It's people experience design from a perspective of we are designers and builders of a people experience. And so we need to take a human-centered approach to that, adopting design thinking and other strategies that allow us to do that, essentially, in a nutshell.
In a nutshell. Thank you for that nutshell. I think we briefly touched a little bit on it also during our previous debate. But so, just so that it's clear for everybody listening or watching now. And here goes then for a part of Luke's posts that will lead to our next statement. All right. I have always had a slight reservation about the phrase MVP. MVP meaning minimal viable product. For brevity, an MVP is a version of the solution which requires the least investment to create and test a usable version with the end user. This is hugely useful as it allows you to get your quote product into the hands of the end user as early as possible and then develop more sophisticated increments over time using direct end user feedback. That's a massive up for this approach. It remains core to how we should work in PX design. However, the problem I've always had with MVP is the nature of minimal viable. It means that potential to create a negative initial user experience is high as you are largely expecting user pain to create the feedback required to improve the product. So what's the alternative? One alternative is minimal lovable product, MLP, an initial solution that users love from the start. However, I have my reservations about the MLP approach too, as the potential to delay the release and allow feature creep to occur is high. Another option is MVE, minimal valuable experience, an initial solution that provides an experience of value from the start. Now this I can work with. After all, even a product-led people team is ultimately in the experience design business, not product design in the strictest sense. In people ops, what we do has a direct impact on employee and business success. So it's important that we provide some initial value in all that we do at the very least. At the very least, we don't want to negatively impact PX and business success through a usable but frustrating MVP. Even as we experiment and iterate using the lean startup approach to incremental user-led continuous improvement. MVE may just be the answer I have been looking for to allow us to carry out rapid experiments with employees and business stakeholders to improve our PX design whilst still adding immediate and frequent value. And all of this, Kim and Luke, brings me to our second statement of today. In PX design, we need to think MVE, not MVP. All right. I see two nodding heads again. I'm going to start with Kim this time. What do you vote on this one?
Yeah, I'll vote a yes, and I'm looking forward to talk more about this.
Nice. Luke?
I wrote it, so it's a yes from me. It probably comes with the caveat that I am splitting hairs a little bit in this, so we'll see where the discussion goes. But yes, of course.
Okay, well, Kim, I'd love to hear more from you.
Yeah, I mean, to Luke's point, I think it's splitting hairs a bit. I think regardless of what we call it and what acronym we give it, the concept holds, which is that I think we spend so much time on the people side trying to get things to be perfect because everything this is just more whining, I guess, but like everything we do is dissected by everyone we give it to, because everyone thinks that they can do this job and that you don't actually have to have experience and talent and knowledge. So you launch a policy, let's say that you're like, okay, this is like, I have done my research. I have spent 6 months putting this together so that it's going to be the best version it can be. You release it and immediately everyone's like poking at it and be like, well, I would have done it this way. And why doesn't it have this? And you're like, there are reasons, I promise, just like trust me to do my job. But to our earlier point, like that's not the way to get buy-in. That's not the way to get people to understand the value of the work you're bringing. And I think there's this is something I came up with last night, literally while I was falling asleep, and I emailed it to myself. So let's see if it still holds. But I think there's a difference between things being good enough and things being good enough. And I'll explain what I mean, because this was a falling asleep thought. I think we spend a lot of time being like, is this good enough? Is this good enough? Is it good? Is it something that people will like and appreciate and love? And like, is it going to do the job? Versus thinking like to the point of the MVE or the MVP or whatever you want to call it, like, is it enough where it's at? Like, it might not be the perfect thing. It might not be lovable yet. It might not be what I want it to be ultimately, but like, is it good enough to call it done for now? Knowing that it's an iterative process. And how can I make people understand that it's not about the finished product being good enough? It's about what I'm delivering being good enough for now. And I know that's like, I was like, is this poetry or is this crazy? I don't know. But it felt like this difference to me that like suddenly became clear, that we spend so much time thinking, I'm going to deliver this thing and I hope people like it, versus I'm going to deliver this thing and it's good enough for now. And maybe it's not perfect. And as long as I explain my process and I explain how and when I'll be revisiting it, then I'm like, yeah, maybe it is good enough for now. And we should not be striving for perfection.
Agreed.
I love that thought before you
Thank you.
Fell asleep.
Sometimes you never know when creativity is going to strike, and this is why we.
Thank you.
I don't know. I send emails to myself so I don't forget.
All right, Luke.
And not much of a debate, because I completely agree. So, so this idea of progress over perfection is really important. We have to be moving forward. So to put this into the context of where it sits for me is the idea of, as Kim was alluding to, rapid iterative development. So rather than going into a room for 6 months like HR's traditionally been very good at, and we're going to make quite a few assumptions about what we think we need to do and what the people need, and then deliver something 6 months down the line that no one really wants or needs, and everyone gets frustrated and angry. We've wasted time. We're annoyed. They're annoyed. It's no good for anyone. So that's at the heart of this idea. The whole MVP, MVE, like we sort of caveated, it's splitting hairs. It's semantic preference. But the concept is we need to get better at in HR and people at delivering unfinished solutions so that we can learn how to improve them. That's really the key to it. In my model, I'm probably throwing too many acronyms in here, but I go for minimum viable prototype. So what is a version of this that I can test as quickly as possible so that I know if I'm on the right direction? And prototypes, again, getting a bit nerdy on it, you can have a concierge or you can have a smokescreen. I love smokescreens. I use them all the time. So a concierge is where you create a version, a prototype that is at least functional, and you give it to some end users to test and they give you feedback. Great. Smokescreen is my favorite because you don't have to do any work. So smokescreen where you present something as being finished, essentially, so that then you see if people actually want it. So you might create a landing page, for example. Let's take benefits, for example. We're going to roll out some new benefits. We could assume we know what benefits people want, or we could just stand up a quick landing page with a load of options in where people can click to request access, and then we know which ones people are accessing. But we've not done any work in the background. And once we know what benefits they actually want, right, let's go and now connect the vendors here and automate the process for access. So that's the sort of MVP, minimum viable prototype. And then you take that in my model and you turn it into an MVE, the first experience that creates value for the end user. Because that prototype isn't creating any value because they can't get anything, but it's giving us a lot of information about what they want. And then we go through that build, test, learn phase to get them something that then delivers a valuable experience. So that's what I talk about it. And then that would then, following the sequence through, once you've got your minimal valuable experience, that then goes into a process of continuous improvement through sprint-based iteration based on priorities. Like, do we need to develop that any further, or is it good enough? And it's that sort of process. So this is why we say we're splitting hairs, because the process is exactly that. Whatever you call it, it's that process of making sure that you're using end user feedback to inform the next direction, and you're using business context and culture to inform prioritization.
I really like what you said, Luke, about getting comfortable delivering unfinished product. I think because so much of our work is in this like highly complex and, I don't know, like legally black and white space. Like there's a lot of HR is things like payroll and things like compliance and things like employee mediation issues, and like things where like you don't want to deliver an unfinished product because there could be risks, right? I think we tend to then apply that lens to all of the work that we do, but not everything HR does is so high risk, right? Some things are high impact, but they're not necessarily high risk. And so being able to look at what you're building and do a quick risk assessment of like, can I deliver this knowing that it might change in a couple of weeks? Can I deliver this knowing that it's not finished? Like, there may be cases where you have to say like, no, I can't deliver this until it's completely done and it's buttoned up and it's had legal review and it's like ready to go. But I bet people would be surprised at how many things they can deliver in alpha or in beta or 100%. In wireframe or smokescreen. Like, there are lots of things that HR is delivering, and not all of them have to be finished.
100%, definitely. And it's I think you're right, because I think you go into, or at least traditionally, the perception of HR is it is very legal and compliance based, isn't it? That's the sort of the lens and the mindset that you carry into the job, which goes back to my post HR generation thing. It's a mindset shift. It's like taking us out of that, and being open to experimentation, open to failing fast, to use the sort of popular term, but it's that idea. Like we have to learn quickly from our end users. We need to get good at rapid experimentation. I really like growth hacking as well. So I don't know if growth hacking is this in product sense, is that you find product market fit, and then you use growth hacking to build in virality and to maximize the customer acquisition and marketing channels. And you do that through rapid experimentations to see what does work and what doesn't. And you can apply the same process for those low risk activities in people ops. You just run a series of week-long mini experiments to find out, okay, what is adding the most value here from, let's say, an experience perspective, and let's double down on that. So it's just.
Do you say that also like helps you generate buzz for what you're doing? If you're
exactly.
It keeps it like front of mind for people,
but
right?
It does.
So I talk about delivering more value more quickly. So it doesn't matter like if it's a finished product, as long as people see some value, even if that value is, this is interesting and it's potentially exciting.
Right.
Like, it's be more visible, and it goes back to our first question. Like, the more people can see what you're doing and they're involved in what you're doing, the more you're embedded in the operational strategic elements of the business. So it's fun, and you're more visible, and everything else that comes with it.
Yeah,
I love that.
And you get more comfortable with the whole going out of that comfort zone, taking measured risks, and et cetera, et cetera. So this could be a great idea, because I wanted to ask you, so what's one way to do that? But this could be a great way just to get started with that, to be honest.
I love it. Anyone who wants to have a play around with it, the book Growth Hacking, I think it's Sean Ellis. I think it's Sean Ellis, is a great book. Obviously, it's not written for us as people, but if you read it with the lens that the people experience is a subscription product, and how can we use growth hacking to create rapid experiments that are going to create real value and compound impact really quickly, is a brilliant book. I've certainly incorporated it into my thinking and how I'm communicating this stuff.
This is great. Growth hacking. What I think actually helps with this a lot is the idea of working in sprint cycles, which is something that our people experience team at Oyster got really good at. And I was always I always found it difficult because I don't have a project management mindset or a product manager mindset. Like it's real hard for me to do that job. And so I always resisted the idea of sprint cycles. But what I realized was that I just shouldn't be the one running them. So when I'm working in sprint cycles with someone else who's like running the project management side of things, it's a really valuable way to keep a steady track of what are we launching? How soon can we launch it? What's our feedback cycle on it? You get into this routine of, whether you have a 2-week cycle or a 4-week cycle, think, what are we working on? When is it launching? When are we reviewing? When do we iterate? When do we launch again? And you just get into this product mindset. And that doesn't work for every single thing that HR people teams do.
Right.
But for the things where it does work, it works really well.
We riffed in your absence. We noticed you had left us, so we carried on riffing. I hope that's okay.
Yeah. Awesome. I'm going to continue now to our third debate before something happens again. I did notice, though, that we have now 2 book tips after 2 debates, which is awesome. We've got Growth Hacking, and we've got the book by Jessica Swan, which is Built for People. So let's see if there's going to be another book tip coming out of the third debate.
Don't forget 7 Dysfunctions of a Team. 3 books.
Yes, there was. Yes. Oh, so we're already at 3. We can stop the episode now then. No. Right.